Welcome to Books on Point. The book, The ANC's Last Decade, notes that for nearly 3 decades, the ANC has held South Africa's politics in an iron grip. With the party seemingly at war with itself and President Ramaphosa battling to rein in corrupt cadres, author Ralph Mathekga predicts that the ANC will fall below the critical 50% threshold before the end of the decade. The decline of the ANC could bring political reform, but also uncertainty. If the ANC loses power, who will be in charge? Who and what will come after the ANC, and how will this affect South Africa? He joins us for more. Ralph, thank you so much for your time. Let's start off with what inspired you to write the book.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers. As you might know, and some of your viewers might know, I observe South Africa's politics. I'm quite a keen observer of South Africa's politics. And I've been observing and writing about the ANC for quite a while, trying to understand how South Africa, they reflect on the ANC as a dominant party. So I go far back, started writing, getting fascinated with President Jacob Zuma's leadership, what it means for South Africa and what it means for the ANC. I then went on to President Ramaphosa as well. And I then realized that, look, I think the curtain is about to be drawn on the ANC. I mean, this is a liberation party that is closing in on a decade, 28 years of being in government, closing in on a decade. Usually they don't last longer than 30 years, the liberation parties. And there is nothing exceptional about the ANC. It is struggling with corruption. It is struggling with trying to transform itself from a liberation party to a modern party. The very same problem we have seen in the region and in across the continent. So it's not a surprise. And I don't think it's a huge revelation that the ANC actually is facing a risk of being out of power. And I think things have actually been accelerated faster if you look at what happened at the November 1 elections last year.
Right. So if one wants to understand the ANC's struggle in terms of its governance right now, when you look at the state-owned entities, where should one begin to try and unpack the way the party functions?
The problem is quite basic, and sometimes you hear people framing it as very, very complicated. It's a very simple situation whereby the tradition of the party, the method of functioning within the party, accountability regime within the party, the health and maybe even the prowess of the internal structures of the party, they just don't fit to function in a modern, complex society. I mean, quite often you hear people within the ANC often talking about the idea of democratic centralism. People sometimes dismiss this idea as just a jargon. For me, it goes to the core of the challenge that this party is dealing with. And I think it is a genuine challenge. Of course, the symptoms are quite dire, such as corruption and so forth. But the challenge here is that the tradition within which the ANC is formed and the history of the ANC as a party that does not have what you can call clear lines of accountability. The whole idea that we are collectively responsible, no one is ever held individually responsible. That type of tradition, it just doesn't work well in a modern framework in a way that you try to arrange the state and the public sector where you need accountability. That is why when some are saying that we need to clean corruption, we need to get rid of corruption, some within the ANC have got the confidence to see it is actually purging. So the problem, quite simple, if you look at it, it's quite basic, the way in which I see it.
When President Ramaphosa took over, just as we got to the end of the Zuma years, as it's been described, he vowed to unite the party and deal with factionalism. How's he doing so far?
Well, the problem is that the only deal that can actually realistically interest others when it comes to this project of uniting the party is just to look the other way when it comes to corruption. So uniting the party, it's a good goal, but I've always been concerned about what will be the condition of that unity. For some within the ANC, the condition of unity will mean some are no longer going to face the might of the law because some members are quite compromised. We can have an example of the current Secretary General of the party who's now under suspension. If you look at the whole story, his idea of unity might come to him not having to answer on the allegations. And for me, it has always been a question as to, is the ANC in a position where members of the ANC can work a unity that will satisfy South Africans outside the ANC. When I say that satisfies South Africans outside the ANC, I mean the unity that shows respect to law and order, the unity that shows accountability, the unity that shows actually focus when it comes to the public service. And I think that we can no longer talk about that within the ANC. Things have gone to a point where I don't think unity is realistically possible within the ANC without actually violating the Constitution.
On that note, then, let's build on a line that you mentioned in one of the chapters. You say that it's been a typical feature of Ramaphosa's cabinet, the multiple competing agendas in a seemingly unguided transition from the Zuma years. Does this then explain the policy incoherency in some aspects where policy isn't really talking to the needs that are on the ground?
It talks to policy that is not being outlined coherently with resolute and also consistently. But it also goes to multiple competing interests. I mean, within the party, I think that you listen on Monday, you hear another view about what the party is about. Some members, senior members are even writing opinion articles that you ask yourself, how did members actually survive in cabinet within the party if they still have these basic questions that in their mind remain unsettled about the ANC's position? So it's about competing interests. And I think that what we have seen recently, look at the debate around the energy issue here. I mean, I was just reading articles that it looks as if the president seems not to be on the same page with the energy minister, Gwera Mantashe, regarding what ought to happen when it comes to transformation of the energy nexus in this country. And I think the whole thing, even if it might be a perception, it's quite a strong one, I want to believe, I think it points to the whole top six that has got multiple competing agendas that it is anyone's guess as to what position they will take on bigger issues here.
And then in that weakness, you would think the opposition parties would have at least made some kind of headway, but they've stumbled along dealing with their own internal issues, right?
Indeed. I mean, in a moment such as this, when a party that has been so dominant, I mean, one of the things that actually the ANC doesn't worry too much, I mean, they worry. But it's also because of the level of fragmentation within the opposition, Nastasia. I mean, you look at it, the opposition in South Africa, it's an opposition camp, actually. They don't even talk before the elections. I mean, we are not aware of any attempt at pre-election coalitions. Even the November 1 election have not brought any significant known talks between opposition parties. That shows you how far they are from each other. Look what they've been doing in council. So what we are seeing is the ANC experiencing a challenge at the center, the ANC not being able to hold. But at the end of the day, it is still the story of the ANC in a sense that it's about how much the ANC can lose. It's not really about how the opposition can actually inflict what you can call maybe electoral or make electoral inroad into the ANC. That's still not being seen significantly. It is still largely the story of the ANC. And it's quite worrying because you see new opposition parties getting rewarded better, and you ask yourself, what happened to the ones that have been there? Were they able to consolidate? That's becoming the story of South Africa's opposition. It's a new kid around the block, election on election.
Ralph, there's so much that I wanted to discuss with you. However, we do want the viewers to go and grab a copy of your book and read for themselves in terms of what's happened over the past decade and what it means for us going forward. However, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That is Ralph Mathekga.